ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸੁਣਦੇ ਪਏ ਹੋ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਰੇਡੀਓ USA। ਸਤਿ ਸ਼੍ਰੀ ਅਕਾਲ, ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸੁਣਦੇ ਪਏ ਹੋ ਗੱਪਸ਼ਪ ਵਿਦ ਖਰੀਸਟਾ ਔਨ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਫੇਵਰਿਟ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਰੇਡੀਓ USA। ਅਸੀਂ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਇਹ ਸ਼ੋਅ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਆਉਂਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਫਰਸਟ ਸੰਡੇ ਆਫ ਐਵਰੀ ਮੰਥ। ਇਸ ਸ਼ੋਅ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਅਸੀਂ ਉਹ ਟੌਪਿਕਸ ਡਿਸਕਸ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਮੈਟਰ ਕਰਦੀਆਂ ਨੇ ਨੌਜਵਾਨ ਪੀੜ੍ਹੀ ਨੂੰ। ਐਂਡ ਅੱਜ ਦੇ ਸ਼ੋਅ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਜੁੜੇ ਨੇ ਇੱਕ ਵੈਰੀ ਸਪੈਸ਼ਲ ਗੈਸਟ ਬਲਪ੍ਰੀਤ ਕੌਰ, ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਦੀ ਫੋਟੋ ਇੰਟਰਨੈਟ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਸਰਕੂਲੇਟ ਕਰਦੀ ਪਈ ਸੀ ਫॉर द past 2 weeks। ਬਲਪ੍ਰੀਤ ਭੈਣ ਜੀ, ਥੈਂਕ you so much ਕਿ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਜੁੜੇ ਹੋ and welcome to our show with Punjabi Radio USA and Korista.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. ਤੇ ਸਾਡੇ listeners ਪੁੱਛਣਾ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਆ ਕਿ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕੌਣ ਹੋ? So ਸਾਨੂੰ ਇਹ ਪਤਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਕਿ ਤੁਸੀਂ Ohio State student ਹੈਗੇ ਤੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕੀ ਪੜ੍ਹਦੇ ਪਏ ਹੋ ਫਿਰ?
ਮੈਂ actually Ohio State ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ neuroscience ਤੇ psychology ਕਰ ਰਹੀ ਹਾਂ. I'm doing a double major and I'm hoping to go into medical school to be a neurosurgeon and go into neuroscience
That's
research.
Great. So what inspired you to go into neuroscience and become a neurosurgeon?
It was actually a very random incident that happened. My mom's friend's dad got into an accident and he had brain trauma. And he had amnesia and he was paralyzed and he had seizures. And so I basically went to the hospital and saw him. And in that moment, I kind of knew that this was what I wanted to do. At first, it was just I want to be a doctor. But once I started exploring what I liked doing and what I wanted to learn, neurosurgery and neuroscience seemed like a really cool way to apply my passion to the real world.
Yeah, I'm very sorry to hear about that, but I'm also really glad that you have such such inspiration behind what you want to do. And you mentioned your mom. Can you tell us a little bit about your family?
Yeah, sure. My mom and dad from India. I was also born there in 1993. My dad came here in 1985, 84-ish, right after 1984 happened. And he came here and worked as a farmer and a taxi driver, came back, married my mom, went back, she had me. We came here and we lived in New York at first. My mom was a factory worker. My dad was a taxi driver, and suddenly he wanted to drive a truck. And we moved to Ohio, first Cleveland and then Cincinnati. And we just bought our first house 5-6 years ago. So we're pretty excited. And it's me, my dad, my mom, my 14-year-old brother, and my grandma who live in that house, and our dog.
Thank you so much for telling us a little bit about your family. And so, Ohio. So how has it been as a Sikh living in Ohio? What are some of the struggles that you've had to deal with?
Well, the Cincinnati Sikh community has just started to grow. We were really, really small when we first came, and then there was an influx of people, and our Gurdwara grew. It literally tripled in size in the past 4 or 5 years.
Wow.
And but in a sense, we haven't had a lot of Gursikh Sangat. We've had probably 2 or 3 people, that are heading up the gurmat and the Gursikh teachings,
Yeah.
And it was kind of through that where I started, getting into what Sikhi was. And before that, being a Sikh was no big deal, I was just kind of every other Indian girl, It wasn't really hard to fit in.
Yeah.
And stuff. So there were no challenges for me as a Sikh before, getting into gurmat. But then once I started, wearing a dastar and, going along that path, people they were like, oh, you're the only girl in Cincinnati that does that. Why do you do that? Why do you try? Why do you even try? And I'm like, it's not me,
Yeah.
You guys chose me to walk this path and I must walk it.
Yeah.
I can't say no to what's happening.
And
so in that sense, now my story has just started. I haven't I wasn't one of those lucky, Sikhs that were always part of Gursikhi and Gurmat, and they've always had Guru Sahib in their lives. But it's been good. It's actually been relatively positive, and if not many negative comments, or the Sangat in Cincinnati, very, very encouraging. Without them, I don't think I would ever be here where I am now, because everyone just went along with the roller coaster.
That's great.
And they saw me grow into what I am now, and very accepting.
That's very, it's great to know that you're surrounded with such loving and caring Sangat. And, in your earlier answer, you had mentioned that you were born in 1993. So you are a very young person, and it really warms the heart to see what you're doing and how confident you are at such a young age. So you just mentioned that your journey is very recent. What led you to adapt this particular Sikh lifestyle, that the lifestyle of a true Gursikh? What led you to adapt this lifestyle?
I wouldn't say it's the lifestyle of a true Gursikh, because I have lots of things to learn, But I personally don't even know, how, when. Sometimes I still wonder, why me? Why me out of all people,
Yeah.
But I guess it started with, Sikh Symposium, and then getting to know, the few Gursikhs in Cincinnati and spending time with them. And then I went to Gurmat camp for the first time, and there I feel like I actually started falling in love with what Guru Sahib had to say and what he wanted us to be. Because for the first time I saw scars with the stars.
Yeah.
Never before had I seen that.
Yeah.
And then they were walking around with so much pyar. I would just feel it, They would just look at me, and I'd be like, "Oh my God, you are so cool," and you don't even have to say anything to me, and I still feel how much you love me, even though you don't even know who I am.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in that, I saw kind of what I wanted to be. It felt like it clicked, that I had finally felt something that I hadn't felt in a really long time, and I kind of got a role model as well. And that camp actually, a Benji tied my first dastar, and like they say, the greatest bonding is always over a dastar tying, and we're still friends.
How old
were
you?
So close, and it just,
Yeah.
She basically started everything. By tying that first dastar, I kind of felt like Mata Sahib Kaur would have felt, and that just began my plunge into Gurmat and trying to be the, best Sikh I could possibly be, and the rest is up to Guru Sahib.
Of course. And so how old were you when you tied your first dastar?
This was the summer of senior year.
In high school, correct?
Yes, the summer of senior year. So I was just getting done with 11th grade.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah.
And that's a very heartwarming story, and you know what? It's very true. So for you, when you first tied a dastar, what were the feelings that went through you? Kind of just give us, tell us what you felt and how that kind of changed your love for Sikhi.
I actually had to write a reflection on this after the ending of camp. They told me to write about it, but the first reaction I had was, "Oh my God, I look like a boy. Oh my God, my head hurts." But it was just so graceful, and so it was a challenge at first. I viewed tying a dastar as a challenge. I wanted to learn how they did it, because they made it look so perfect and so circular and just fit your face somehow. You looked complete.
Yeah.
And I wanted to know how they did that. And so at first it wasn't even about I want to get into Sikhi. It was more I really want to learn how they managed to make themselves look so regal, so like queens,
Yeah.
And after camp, I basically stopped tying a dastar. I kind of just let it fade away, and then got back again in December, where I randomly decided that I wanted to start tying it again. And this time I started tying it every Sunday. And no matter how bad it looked, I was like, okay, just throw chunni on. That's okay, That's why
Of
you have a
course.
chunni. But now that I've went through all of that, and I'm actually getting better at tying my dastar. It takes me like 5 minutes now, which is
That's impressive.
a great step from an hour and a half it would take me before. It's more like it's become an extension of my own body, It's become a part of who I am. I can't leave my dorm without my dastar on, and I feel very incomplete and messy. I feel disoriented without my dastar now. It keeps me centered in a way, and it just reminds me every day, like, after Nithanim, when I'm tying my dastar, that, like, you're a soldier, and this is your discipline, and you've got to stick with it.
Definitely.
Yep.
And, you said something very interesting at the beginning of your response, which was, oh my God, I look like a guy. And in your response on Reddit, you also said, yes, I realize that my gender is often confused, and I look different than most women. How is that? What has been the response in that sense? How have you dealt with that kind of emotion? Yeah, you know what? Maybe you don't know that I'm a woman. How do you deal with that?
Yeah. That was a really tough journey. Like, it was different in Cincinnati because everyone knew who I was, and they kind of accepted it,
Mm-hmm.
But here at OSU, it's like no one's ever seen a Kaur, a dastar wali bibi, with facial hair and stuff. And I don't know. For me, it was just kind of like, oh, I look like a guy.
Yeah.
But that's okay. Somehow I managed to reach to the conclusion that it's okay because, gender is totally unnecessary, I feel like, because our own soul is female compared to a kalpurk, which is like the husband, So this is all a kapda regardless, I might have been a guy in my previous life, It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It was how I was created, and that's okay. So in that sense, I've kind of accepted the perceptions of myself, As long as I know who I am, and Guru Sahib knows who I am, I feel like that's all that matters. And once again, it's all a kapda, We might have been something else before. We might be something else after this. So why fuss about it, right? And that was kind of the thinking I had behind accepting everything. I was just like, that's okay. And then the Gurbani line, Teri Bhagat na chodo paave log hase. Despite people like having misconceptions about you, despite people laughing at you or mocking you, I will not let go of your hand. I will never let go of this path that you set me on. And that kind of conviction I found through Gurbani, through what Guru Sahib himself experienced, And I used to tell myself that after Nithanim and stuff, I was like, you're beautiful because Guru Sahib loves the way you are,
Aww.
He wouldn't have made you this way if he thought you were ugly.
Yeah, of course.
And I would just remind myself that you're only like trying to please Guru Sahib. You're not trying to please anyone else, and that you should just keep going, and it doesn't matter because you know who you are, and Guru Sahib knows what you are and what you're made of, and I don't know.
That's very, honestly, that's very beautifully stated. Just like the post that you put up on Reddit, you have so much confidence, and it's so beautiful to hear it in your voice and to see that. And just since you're really honestly, Balpreet, we've had this discussion offline. You've mentioned this to me many times. Is the situation is not about me, Manpreet. The situation is not about me. It's about so many of the other cores as well who are dealing with a similar situation. And truth is that, you, as much as it's not about you, and I agree with you, you've done a really great job of highlighting the state that many cores are in as far as their identity and their where they are in their Sikhi. So my next question to you is, you mentioned that that no one at Ohio State had seen, like people had not seen a Kiski wearing BB at Ohio State when you first started going to school there.
Yeah.
So, what was kind of from how has your college experience been as a woman who practices her Sikhi?
It's been really good. Surprisingly, you hear those stories like, oh, college chale gaye, oh my God, wal kat le, oh my God,
Yes, yes.
and then you never hear of them again, like college is this dark pit of weirdness that you never get out of.
Well said.
But I feel like college has strengthened my Sikhi rather than defeat it,
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm the only Dastar Wali Bibi here, because I am so different, it kind of acts like a filter. The people that are too afraid to approach me,
Yeah.
they won't be my friend, and the people that are courageous enough to come talk to me, they've become the bestest friends I've ever had. And in a sense, it's like this group is protecting me from sangat or, just having a bad influence and just focusing on the people that you want to spend time with. The people that see beyond the star and they just see me as Balpreet, the Harry Potter nerd who spends most of her time procrastinating on her homework, And in a sense, that has been the defining moment of college where I have had, true friends that see beyond what I look like. And, they don't care. They just know that I'm Balpreet and they're fine with it, And also in college, because, there's not a lot of Sikhs at OSU, and if there are, I can't tell.
Yeah.
And so I started getting involved with interfaith work. I was getting more stares and less questions. I would love if people would come up to me and ask me, hey, why do you do that? Hey, why do you look the way you do? Tell me. Kind of approach their ignorance instead of just letting it go.
Yeah.
And so in a sense, that's why I wanted to make a difference, to facilitate dialogue within communities and kind of get out of my own shell of insecurity that, people are scared to talk to me, but why am I scared to talk to them?
Mm-hmm.
Why can't I, make contact with someone and approach them and say, hey? So interfaith work kind of opened that door for me.
Mm-hmm.
I started working with Interfaith Youth Corps, which was actually mentioned in the post as well.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And they basically give resources to college students to have their own interfaith campaign on campus through, creating relationships between faiths and non-faiths.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess that venue opened up this whole new me that I didn't even know existed. I was confident, I was laughing, and I was approaching strangers as Balpreet. I wasn't approaching them as, oh, turban girl wants to know diversity.
Yes.
I genuinely wanted to make relationships and friends that I've still kept in contact with.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been an amazing experience. Getting to know people who might not be Sikh, but they're still going through the same thing as you are. They're still struggling with the fact that their faith, which is a big part of them, is taboo in this culture. You can't talk about it. You can't have substantial conversation about why you believe in what you believe in without people looking at you strangely. And that kind of common thread was very inspiring, And it kind of made me realize that gurmat is everywhere. You know, that Guru Sahib's message was so universal that you see little flashes of it within other religions and other faiths.
Mm-hmm.
And it just made me feel even more appreciative of, you know, Guru Sahib's message of Ikonkar. And it made me see that, you know, they might not be Sikh, but they are human. And Guru Sahib wants you to love them and, like, have relationships with them regardless.
Definitely.
And it just made me realize how isolated our Sikh community is, truthfully.
Of course. So what do you mean by that, actually? Let's, yeah.
I don't know. I feel like from the precedents that Guru Tegh Bahadur Ji set for the Sikh Panth, you know, he gave his life for a religion, a practice that he didn't believe in.
Mm-hmm.
That is the epitome of interfaith work, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
And for us to then not even address that issue and connect ourselves with other communities around us, and that's kind of why I just realized, wow, we don't do this enough in our own community. Because the first time I went to the Interfaith Core Leadership Institute, it was me, a Singh from Texas, and a Kaur from Chicago that were the only Sikhs there. And
wow.
Yeah. Wow. Out of the 150 students that were there, we were the only 3 Sikhs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it was really sad, but very it was just a reflection of the reality that we are a minority, but it shouldn't stop us from being a part of the larger community, you know.
So, Balpreet Benji, you know, you bring up a very good point with that, is our community, despite it being the 5th largest religion in the world, is very underrepresented at a lot of these, with a lot of these organizations and a lot of the efforts that are going on globally. So what are some things that you think we can do as a community to really bridge that gap and put more Singhs and Kaurs out there at the forefront and fighting for, not just fighting, but like really representing the Panth in issues that matter not just to us, but to the global community that we live in?
One thing would be to just kind of view as your faith as not a barrier, but a way to improve yourself, you know, and kind of, it's all seva. Yeah. You know, if you think of it, we're known for our lungars, man.
Of course, really are.
Yeah, that is the one thing that comes up every time I do interfaith work. Like, oh yeah, Sikhs, they do langar, right? I'm like, yes.
Free food, right?
Because, yeah. Then I'm like, because we believe in selfless service, because we believe that we have a duty toward humanity, you know, not just Sikhs, to be activists, to make a difference. You know, that's what being a Saint soldier, a Sant Sipahi is all about, that you're always ready to fight against oppression and tyranny, you know, while realizing that your faith, your spiritual inspiration comes from Guru Sahib. It comes from within you, you know. And I feel like once we as a Panth have put that perspective into our framework, then I feel like we would be more connected and we'd be able to reach out to other communities, you know. And it's just we're afraid. We're afraid. That's the problem. We're afraid of ourselves and of others, and that shouldn't happen because Guru Sahib said to be nirbal, you know. You should be without fear. You shouldn't care. You should just do it. You know, actions over words. And that is a lesson that I'm still learning, you know. We're all learning, and it's a long process, but if you trust Guru Sahib and just keep going, regardless of how many mistakes you make, then you'd be surprised where you end up in 2 years. Like right now, I didn't expect to be here.
Definitely. So true. Balpreet Benji, that's very true, and you bring up such good points. One question that I really have actually wanted to ask you is, you touched upon ignorance and how we can really just educating people is a very powerful tool. So and I'm bringing it back a little bit to the post that was on Reddit. When you first saw this post on Reddit, and you had mentioned in your response that a friend actually brought it up to you, what was the initial emotions that went through you? And, one of the things that people are just so amazed by is the gracefulness and the humble response you left back to that individual. Where do you get that sort of confidence and that calm and very tolerant nature and person? Like, where does that come from? We really want to know, I think, how we can strive towards that, and what were some of the emotions that went through you, and how you balance that out.
Well, um, the first reaction I had to the whole post, my friend actually just posted the picture. He took a screenshot of his phone and said, "Oh, hey, I found you on Reddit." And I was like, "Oh, wow. I didn't know I was on the internet." That was my first reaction, like, "Oh my God, I'm on the internet." And then my second thought was, "Oh, I already know what they're going to say."
Yeah.
In regards to where I get this calm and stuff, it would be corny of me to say it's all Gurusev, because I am I don't know, I live in the roller coaster of life, I have ups and downs, and I guess it was just, I don't know, Gurbani, Gurmat, and then interfaith work just showed me to be tolerant, to kind of view every opportunity as a way to teach people, I didn't. It's really funny because people are like, "You got cyberbullied. You are a victim of bullying," and my thoughts are, I didn't feel victimized.
Yeah.
I didn't feel like I got attacked. I knew what they were going to say. I'm perfectly aware of how people perceive me, but the difference is I know that they're staring at me. They're asking all these questions not out of, any ill intentions.
Mm-hmm.
They are genuinely curious
Mm-hmm.
and just ignorant. That's it. They've never seen a Sikh before.
Mm-hmm.
They haven't seen what Sikhi stands for.
Mm-hmm.
So they express their ignorance in different ways, and unfortunately, the original poster decided to express it in a very, I guess, seemingly offensive way.
Yes.
But there's nothing I can do about that. I can't stop people from having, convoluted first impressions of me.
Mm-hmm.
But if I turn it around and kind of elevate the conversation to something that they do understand and kind of offer them like background on what I am,
Mm-hmm.
then maybe it'll teach people, to be more tolerant. I guess a lesson that we can all learn from all this is, like, don't judge a book by its cover, because you really don't know how beautiful of a story is in its pages,
Yeah.
and it's just a fact of life. People are going to judge you, but
Mm-hmm.
it's up to you how you take it.
Definitely.
You can drop down to their level, or you can push them up to a higher level of thinking and
Mm-hmm.
acceptance. And what's really inspiring for me is that women, actually, women that aren't even Sikh. They're like messaging me, emailing me. They're like,
Yeah.
I've had cancer. I'm struggling to accept what I am, and I can't, seem to deal with what people are saying to me. And it's really inspiring that, you somehow managed to elevate the whole conversation into a new realm and showed what it means to be tolerant and to be accepting, and and that really humbles me because they're not even Sikh and they can relate, to what I'm facing and what other Kaurs are facing.
Yeah.
And it just shows, like, you can be your own hero, People are going to attack you, people are going to judge you, but you have your own shield within yourself. And you have your own medicine, and you can use it to heal yourself and be stronger.
Benji, I can imagine the number of emails you've been receiving over the past 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Because on our end at Chorista, we've been receiving a lot of emails that we actually have to send to you as well.
Oh my God.
So, one of them, and, right when you said that, I quickly pulled up our Facebook page and went into our private messages. And there have been, and I was trying to count it, but I can't. The number of messages we've gotten that are for you.
Please don't count
we will at some point compile all of them and send them your way.
Oh,
but
man.
To start off with, one of the posts came from a lovely woman named Becky, who is actually not Sikh, but she wanted to convey this message to you, and I really feel like this would be the best medium to convey it to you with. You're a wonderful ambassador for women, for your religion, and for tolerance, acceptance, and understanding. Hats off to you. Balpreet Benji, I can agree with that to all degrees. And Becky, I think, put it the best way. But with Becky, there were also other people who, sent these very interesting questions for you. One question is from a lovely lady named Stephanie, who says, you are so brave and eloquently spoken. Where does your patience for so much ignorance come from? I'm 35 years old, and I've let my lack of self-confidence define my entire life. Can you give me a tip? So, one quick tip for Stephanie, what would it be?
That's hard because I've had self-confidence issues as well. I know exactly where she's coming from. I feel like the source of all insecurities and arrogance is the fact that we are looking outside. We're looking outside of ourselves for praise, for self-approval, when it really comes from your own self. Once you've delved inside and you realize, oh, okay, I'm insecure. Why am I insecure? Why is it that people's words are affecting me so much? And then that kind of introspection, always kind of double checking on yourself is very necessary. And I feel like that's kind of the source of all insecurities. We're not introspective. We're extrospective. We want to look outside and we want to say, oh yeah, I'm popular because they all think I'm cool. But we don't take enough time to look inside and kind of just say, okay, am I really happy with how things are happening? If I'm not, then what can I do? Because Guru Sahib gave us, this power to be self-sovereign, to make our own decisions. And once we realize that the only power we need is within us, and we have it, that is the most empowering thing we can do. We can accept ourselves, even with our imperfections.
Yeah.
And it's...
Sorry. Go ahead.
That's okay. You can continue.
All right. So, that's a very, being very kind of understanding ourselves is
Yeah.
actually part of today's theme of our show, which started off with, we started today's show with the term "you do you," which I have a really good friend who constantly, whenever he ends conversations, he likes to end them on the note, "You do you, do what you want to
Yeah.
do, you do you." And
Exactly. Like,
so,
you do
how
you.
does that phrase resonate with you? So our listeners can know, what does "you do you" mean to Balpreet Benji?
You do you just means just being you, even when you're not perfect. Because perfection is something that we are chasing constantly, but we're never going to get it because it doesn't exist, you know?
Definitely.
Being perfect is a Kalpurk's job,
Of
It's Guru
course.
Sahib's job. It's not our job. We're Avgun Pare, we have so many imperfections, but that shouldn't stop you because that's the beauty of everything, Even a smashed mirror, a cracked mirror looks beautiful, And the only thing you can do is accept it and kind of enjoy it and look at it in a different perspective and, just be you.
Of course. So, Benji, with that note, one last question for you, and then I know we want to let you also get some good night's sleep later tonight. But one last question for you. There was, within our community itself, there was a lot of mixed response. And we got some people who were, even as Sikhs within the Sikh community, had some negative things to say. And you know what? We're not here to even think about the negative right now. We're here to change the world and be positive. So, on a positive note, for all the cores out there, because I remember when you sent that email to Corista, and I remember reading it, I still remember the whole thing. You said, this, I'm not sending this to you because it's about me. I'm sending this to you because I feel like it's a perspective and it's something that a lot of other cores are dealing with. And so for all those cores out there, including myself, what is one message you have to say to them who are really aspiring and want to follow follow this path of Sikhi and dive deeper into the faith? What is some advice you can give to these women?
Just keep going. Keep going, and you don't know if you're going to die tomorrow or the moment right now, and just seize it. Don't waste your time with doubt, because we spend our entire lives doing that, and we miss out on so many opportunities that might have changed our lives and made us better, but we're too afraid to seize them,
Thank you so
So
much.
just keep going and trust Guru Sahib, Even small steps are gigantic victories sometimes.
Beautifully said. And we don't expect less from you. Balpreet Benji, thank you so much for joining us on Gupshup with Corista on Punjabi Radio USA. It's truly an honor to have you on air with us and really getting to know you. I know over the past week and a half, I've gotten to know you, and you can ask a lot of my friends this offline, but there were points where I said, this person is just so awesome. I want to be her friend. And so I'm sure there's a lot of people who've expressed those same feelings, and people have actually expressed that to me. And so you have been an inspiration not just to your fellow cores, but to women globally. And thank you so much. And thank you again for joining us today. You've enlightened us also on the phrase "you do you" that we've been struggling with.
No, thank you for having me. Just thank you. I'm glad that I could, be of service somehow. But at the end of the day, it's not me, it's gurmat. You guys are inspired, myself included, by gurmat, and that's how it should be. One of the first cars I met a year ago, I was really struggling with like this new form I was in, and this whole path, And I emailed her, and I was like, why don't people accept me? Why am I facing all this difficulty? And she said that this is just a cycle, Our struggles and our subsequent victories will inspire another Kaur, and then this whole difficult time you're facing, it'll all be worth it,
Yeah.
And then the cycle will continue because she'll be inspired, and she'll inspire another Kaur and another Kaur and another Kaur. And so it was just kind of like that spirit behind her words inspired me to kind of send it to you, because I wanted Kaurs to realize that, yeah, we do struggle.
Yeah.
It's okay, but you have to realize that people are going to judge you. They are going to say nasty things. But if you're secure within your own self, if you have faith, then none of them seem important.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
ਸਰੋਤਿਓ ਆਪਾਂ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਦੇ ਪਏ ਸੀ ਬਲਪ੍ਰੀਤ ਕੌਰ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ, who was in the headlines for the past week or two. ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ photo was getting a lot of coverage on many media outlets, including Yahoo. ਅਤੇ Reddit ਤੇ originally post ਹੋਈ ਸੀ, ਤੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਮੂੰਹ ਤੋਂ ਸੁਣਨਾ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਸੀ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ experiences, and ਅਸੀਂ ਸੁਣਦੇ ਪਏ ਸੀ ਤੇ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕਰਦੇ ਪਏ ਸੀ ਬਲਪ੍ਰੀਤ ਕੌਰ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ, ਤੇ ਇਹਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਮੈਂ ਕਹਿੰਦੀ ਹਾਂ ਸਤਿ ਸ਼੍ਰੀ ਅਕਾਲ, and thank you for listening to Gupshup with Karista on Punjabi Radio USA.
ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸੁਣਦੇ ਪਏ ਹੋ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਰੇਡੀਓ USA